My friend Caitlin is here. She is a graduate of Womp Womp and getting ready to do her push her emerging website forward. So we were talking a little bit about that. And so the reason that Caitlin's here specifically today is because I'm in the middle of launching an August cohort for Womp Womp. So I wanted to invite her to come share her experience, but I also want to talk about like what you do and like how you've gotten to this point. So you're a nonprofit copywriter. I would love to know like kind of what led you to pick nonprofits, because I know as we were talking, you were kind of like, well, maybe I will, maybe I won't, because you have so much cool experience across so many different areas. You were a teacher, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like you have insights into all these really awesome disciplines, all these really awesome industries. So I'd love to know, how you've settled on the direction that you're going now, but I'd also love to know what your experience with Womp Womp was like.
Okay.
That's a loaded question. We don't do simple.
I really, it's interesting because at middle age, I feel like all roads have kind of led me to this point, but my route to copywriter was not a linear one. I think I hear that a lot from copywriters. As a student, I loved English. English and history were my favorite subjects. But to me, especially as a kid, I saw somebody who studied English or who wanted to be a writer as being either a journalist or somebody who wrote a book. And I wasn't really interested in that. I wasn't sure how I could use my English skills for a marketable career. And then even going into college, I didn't have a career plan really. I thought, well, I'm going to major in English because it's my favorite subject. It's what I like to do. I'll figure it out. And then in college, everyone's saying, okay, English and history, that's either law or education. And still, I wasn't sure. So after college, I decided to go in AmeriCorps, which AmeriCorps really fit in with who I am. As a kid growing up, I loved volunteering. I did a lot of volunteerism with my family, with my parish. In high school, I was in Key Club. I don't know if that's still a thing, the Kiwanis Club. I was very active in that. And so with AmeriCorps, I thought, yeah, I'm going to stall for a little bit, try and figure it out. But I also get to get back to my interest in volunteerism and my interest in nonprofits. So that year in AmeriCorps was really extremely beneficial in so many ways for me. It was a year of like really tremendous growth. I got to do all kinds of things with my AmeriCorps program. I got to see how a nonprofit worked. At part of that time, I was doing teaching high school equivalency, the GED classes. I was teaching at-risk students. And I also had gotten a part-time job teaching composition at a community college. And so when I finished with AmeriCorps, I thought, okay, teaching. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into teaching. And I did for 16 years. Teaching was my life. I loved it. I taught every grade except seniors and pretty much every level of English from freshmen through juniors. And that was great. Then I left to stay at home with kids. And then when it was time to go back to work, I was thinking, I don't know if I want to go back to teaching or not. I'm ready for a change. And so then I kind of put it all together. I thought, well, I want to do some writing. I love writing. And I love the nonprofit world. How can I make this work together? So I took some business classes, needed to get more of a business foundation. And then I just started looking around at what the needs were in the nonprofit space. I took a couple classes, the Copywriter Accelerator program, which really helped me to develop my business model. And then I took your class, the Womp Womp to Wow. I have to tell you, I was immediately drawn to Womp Womp to Wow because of the name.
Do you know the story behind the name? It was part of the copy from like day one. But it used to be called like the 21-day web copy intensive. And I'm like, this is really lame, but I have nothing else. And so I shared it with Kira Hug. Mm-hmm. And she's like, it's right here in the copy, Erin. What about Womp Womp? And I'm like, oh, why didn't I think of it's like I can write the copy, but naming things is always so tricky. So that's a fun story. Like it was always part of it, but.
Well, I can't even say it without hearing like the Debbie Downer trombone, right?
Okay, so this was in an email I sent out. Didn't Big Bird make a Womp Womp sign in Sesame Street? Did he make that sound? Was it Oscar?
Yeah, I think you're right. I have to go back and check my Sesame archive, but that sounds very.
So when I was Googling gifts, I was like, there's no Big Bird Womp Womp. All I could find was a Saturday Night Live gal who
Mhm.
is amazing. But
Right.
it was like, there's someone who does the Womp Womp. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's on Sesame Street. I could find absolutely nothing. So
Mhm.
I just went with the story of like, I'm pretty sure this is there, at least in my head. So that's anyway, that thank you. I also can't say it without saying womp womp. But well, that's it, right? Like it's so easy to write other people's copy, relatively speaking. It's easy to dive into the project, figure out what it is, figure out the core messages, because you have this like mile high view of their business that they don't have because they're working in the business.
Mhm.
Um, flip that to you and you're working in the business. As copywriters, I think we feel like we should be able to do our own copy. It's like, oh, we
Mhm.
do it for other people. Why can't we do it for ourselves? But it's so hard. Like, it's so hard. And I don't know if it's just the pressure we put on ourselves or if it's the fact that we don't have that perspective. Like, we aren't able to take off our copywriter hat and switch it out with a client hat and like really onboard ourselves, which is what's different actually going into Womp Womp this cohort than the Womp Womp that you went through is that the introductory module is now actually step one. It's not like step zero, it's step one. And
Okay.
it's focusing on onboarding yourself as a client
Oh,
because
uh-huh.
I mean, it's the same trainings, right? But it's just taking it from this different mindset of you go from the writer and then it's like it allows you to kind of step into both of those hats. And I think it's like I said, the trainings aren't all that different. It's just the fact that you're thinking about it as like, oh yeah, I'm the client. I'm not just trying to do this for my business, but I'm trying to see myself as the client. And I think it's not a significant change, like I said, but it's that mindset shift.
Yes, yes. And I really appreciate too, as a former teacher, just your structure of the program, which I think is very, very helpful because you give an example, you talk the group through the example, and then you give them their own practice. And then after that, you review it together and you give critical, constructive feedback. So just that model, I appreciate so much and I found extremely helpful. And also, actually, when I did your copy deck training, when I entered the training and I kind of laughed because I'm the age of I don't know what a slide deck is because I still talk about things as PowerPoints, right? But so I'm entering your copy deck training, which I thought was fabulous. And
Thank
as you're
you.
going through and talking about it, I thought, oh, it's a lesson plan. It's like you're writing a lesson plan for your client. It's basically it. Like it's like here's the objective, here's the established objectives that we've talked about. Here's what I'm going to do for my project step by step, and then here's the final result and just giving that to them ahead of time is so helpful.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about it. So my mom was a teacher for ever. And I think once a teacher, always a teacher also.
Mhm.
But she taught for, I don't know, 20 plus years. And then she went into curriculum development. But I don't think she edits stuff for me, but
Okay.
she has not been part of Wampum. She hasn't seen how that's grown and changed because she wasn't living with us are we living with her? Is she living with us? I'm not really sure the way our house is set up. But we weren't living in the same house at the time that I was developing it. So she wasn't really privy to like how that all set up. But I'll have to ask her like how she sees really Womp Womp, but also the copy deck. And incidentally, the copy deck is going to be a new training
Oh, cool.
in Womp Womp. So everyone will have access, at least in this cohort, to the initial training, which is limited access. It's only going to be available for another month. But additionally, sorry, I'm tripping over my words here. Additionally, like there's going to be a focus training on doing the copy deck for your own website. What do you need to know? How can you pull this forward from the existing tools that you've created, even if it's not super specific? Like, how can you do this? So that's interesting. Like, thank you for sharing that. So what would you tell people who are considering joining Womp Womp?
I mean, I would say it was 100% worth it. I think just for giving you like the structure that you need and the inspiration that you need to kind of get out of your own head and to get the words down on paper. Also, just the really excellent opportunity to have feedback from talented people in the industry. I think that that's extremely valuable also. I also liked with Womp Womp how, and this is different from other courses that I've participated in, there's really a lot of freedom with when you are able to work and then when you're able to collaborate. So yes, there's kind of like deadlines that you're supposed to meet, but you can also work at your own pace in a way that works with your schedule. So I found the setup to be really flexible. And I also just really love the constructive feedback that the course offers too.
Thank you. And I like to hop in and tell people what I think is working and what could be stronger. But I also, like you said, my opinion is just one of other people. So I really like getting other people's feedback in as well, because they bring insights. It's like you said, all roads lead to this point. Everyone has all these different experiences that lead them to this point in their life. So you bring the value of that perspective in. And so I think that's really interesting to see and to poke holes in things and say, this is great, but here's how I think it could be better. And I think, I always strive to make those super gentle so that they're not, it's not like a criticism. It really is, here's what I think is really good. What if you tried this to do it a little bit differently? Because I want it to be a safe space where people aren't afraid to share their work, because it's intimidating. It's always intimidating to share things. But just to kind of reiterate the structure for people who are either watching this live or watching this after the fact, it is designed to be a 4-week course, but you get 8 weeks of feedback. So if you want to focus on home, or, like the onboarding first, then home, about, and services, we do generally have a focus on those in weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4. However, if you fall behind, if you need more time, if you're like, I want to take 2 weeks apiece for this, that is absolutely not a problem, because we have those extra weeks. And initially it was designed as a 6-week course with 2 weeks for each of 3 modules, but extra time doesn't always mean that you're working on it extra time. So it's like, let's accelerate it so you can get the results much more quickly. But on the flip side, if you need more time, it's available, which, it's kind of like that grace period of like, oh, if I don't do it, I'm out. It's not it at all. And you can actually get more time in Snack Bar too, which is the community for Womp Womp. And we have a Slack group, and summer has kind of befallen me, and I have not been as good about putting prompts in as I would like to be, but we'll be picking that back up, of course, in August as well. What, anything else that you'd like to share, or that we want to talk about what you do? Because we talked about like how you got to this point in your experience with Womp Womp, but tell me more about what you're doing with nonprofits.
Okay, well, I know a lot of copywriters, I think I mentioned this to you earlier, like a lot of copywriters are really interested in, or writers, I should say, are interested in either doing copy or doing content. And I'm honestly interested in doing both, because I kind of look at it as everything's an argument, right? All words can be used for persuasion. So with nonprofit, and what I'm interested in doing is helping nonprofits get sustained engagement. I've in talking with a lot of people in the industry and in various work that I've done with nonprofits, I see that is really a challenge. It's getting people to stay invested in your mission. So what I want to offer is copy and content to increase that sustained engagement. One thing I'd like to offer is kind of at the beginning part of the funnel, blogs. I think all nonprofits would benefit from a blog, and not that many have one. If you have a writer who can write for SEO, then you can bring people to your website. And then from the website, you can get people to take an action, like joining a newsletter or donating money, donating time. And that's what I'd like to offer with the website. Copy is punching that up and making it easier for people to take an action, making it more compelling so that people want to take an action. So I've got blogs, I've got website copy, and then I have newsletter content. Because the newsletter is great because You are pitching to a friendly audience. They're people who like you. They're people who have given you their email addresses. And so I want to offer newsletter content as a way to keep those who have already donated interested, and to keep you, the nonprofit, top of mind with those donors.
Well, and I think you're really skilled at what you do because, I mean, first you have that background in nonprofits, but I've also seen what you write, and I think a lot of it comes back to your experience as a teacher. What's the angle that's going to keep people engaged and interested? What is that thing that's going to be this memorable, sticky phrase or a sticking point that's going to make them say, "Ah, this is why I love this company. This is why I love this organization." So I think that's and you're a really good writer as well, but I agree with you. Like everything's a persuasion. There is a way to make blogs conversion based, and there is a way to just have them be journalistic style articles that are informational only. And while I think there's room for both, there's absolutely room for both. But like if you're not, if your goal, and this is my perspective, like, and I'm curious if you're like yes or like no, you're crazy. Is that it's all a spectrum, content and copy. Some is short form, like copy is generally short form, even if it's a long form sales page. The only job of any line of copy, I think, is to get you to read the next line. And while that's true to a point of content, it's less focused on conversion and more focused at like that top of funnel, that building awareness, and even the middle of the funnel, and like being like, yeah, keeping them engaged and what can you deliver. So I'm excited to see you grow this and become the go-to nonprofit copywriter. It's happening. I think I'm confident. And so talk to me about your website. It's awesome, by the way. Your copy is fantastic. I have not yet been to the emerging version, but when is that dropping?
Thank you. I'm hoping by the end of September. I'm working with a designer, and both myself and my designer have kids that are home for the summer. So we're kind of waiting for a couple of weeks till they're back in school to really start hitting this hard. But I want to have my services outlined. My homepage, I'm super happy with. I have to update a couple things there, but I really feel like through Womp Womp, I was able to distill my main ideas and get those out on the page. That was super helpful. So I'm happy with that, but I'll be building out to add my services and to add a separate About Me page and a little bit more on a contact page. So I definitely have some work to do with more that's coming, but I'm really excited about it.
I'm really excited to see it. You'll have to share it. Let me know. But I think you said something interesting there, and I think that's probably one of the hardest things. You said a lot of interesting things. Like it's easier to edit something once you get your ideas out than it is to actually get the ideas out in the first place. But I don't think it's ever done. Like I think we always will continually make tweaks to our stuff because nothing about the world we live in is static. And so when everything's changing anyway, like your business has to change too. So, and as you get to the point where you're like, I just cannot write another, I don't know, services page, you may be like, all right, we're focusing on, home and about, or whatever that is. I have a copywriter friend who's like, I don't ever want to write another landing page. I don't ever want to do another welcome sequence. I've done 500 of these. It's time to move on. And then that gives her permission to move on as well and to kind of refine what she is and what she's doing and what she's known for. But by building a name, she's already there.
I think that's super interesting too. It's just a willingness to be flexible. I think that's so important in any job. That's one thing I learned from teaching. I mean, if you can't be flexible in the classroom, then you're just going to fall on your face every day. Just the willingness to grow and to be able to change your services and offerings. I was just speaking with someone the other day who said, okay, nonprofits really need a lot of direct mail. I said, okay, and then maybe that's a direction that I'd like to go in the future. Not right now, but I'm going to be thinking about it. And I'm going to be looking at what other people are saying too. And if that's a need that my market has, and I'm going to work on really learning that and making that an offer. So I think just that idea to kind of always be learning about your industry and seeing what your clients need and being willing to adjust to that. I think that's super important.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you again for coming on this morning. I know I was like, Caitlin, come on your line. And you're like, but I'm really glad that you're here. Thank you for this. And then if you are watching either now or later and want to get in touch with Caitlin, the links for her LinkedIn and her website are in the description of this video. So you can contact her at any point if you want to talk nonprofits, talk nonprofit copy, or just, in general, have questions for her. So thank you again. And, if you have any last words, speak now. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and click out here.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity. This was really fun. And I thoroughly enjoyed your class and enjoyed getting to know you. I learned so much from the moment that I heard you on the Copywriter Club podcast. Actually, that's where I first heard you. And because I remember, I have to say this to you, I really admire the fact that you do live edits. That's what caught my attention in the Copywriter Club podcast. I thought, wow, this woman does live edits. That's incredible. And then when you started talking about your class, I was really interested. And I'm so glad that I took it. It provided me with so much value in just building my own site and honestly in building my business too. So thank you, Erin, so much for everything. And I really had a good time. It was great being here.
Well, thank you. And thank you for saying that. It's, I've enjoyed getting to know you as well. And I look forward to staying connected with you.
Same.
But you've also seen the live edits in action though.
Yeah.
And it's not as intimidating a thing as I think a lot of people think it is. Once it's like, we're doing this live, oh my gosh, the pressure, but there's a process. Mm-hmm. So, well, thank you again. And we'll see you. Well, I'll be back tomorrow with Grace Fortune. And then on Thursday with Joanna May to talk more.
Great.